These are not designed for when you're wearing a white t-shirt. Terrible for taking your family of 4 on holiday. Not good for if you've got an early bedtime coming up. And this hasn't been designed for someone who wants the biggest, best possible option. This is for someone who wants incredible image quality in the smallest possible package. To capture the detail and contrast of this beautiful landscape, inside of here we have a medium format 102 megapixel sensor alongside the X Processor 5. Now that's very similar to the innards that we see with the GFX100S Mark II, and I took that to New York a little while ago, so if you want to see that video and what that camera can do, I'll pop a link in the description for you. We also have a 5.76 million dot viewfinder here. Now it is an electronic viewfinder, not an optical like the switch you get with the X100 series when you can go between the two, even though we have this little switch on the front which I'll tell you about later. It is just a standard EVF, but it's very bright and it's beautiful, and the magnification is 0.84, and I think you need something like that if you're going to be viewing 102 megapixels worth of image. Let's talk about the lens. On here we have a fixed 35mm f4 aperture lens. You can't change this. 35mm on a medium format sensor sits at around 28mm equivalent for full frame, but that f4 is f4 no matter what. Now in terms of depth of field, you'll get something that looks more like a 3.2 on full frame, but f4 is letting in the same amount of light. When you've got a landscape like this and light like this setup is epic. However, in this light, it becomes a bit more frustrating. But let's worry about that later, because right now we have some incredible views to take a look at. Something that's harder to communicate with a camera like this is the shooting experience. There's a few new custom dials, functions, etc. that I want to show you that I think make a big difference to that. So on the front, we have what looks like a little triple pillar of design controls here. So the top one is actually just the on-off switch, so don't worry about that. Underneath it, we have this beautiful gnarled dial. So that is just the same sort of dial as you have front and back on a lot of cameras, but it's nice and thick and it's really easy to differentiate because of how it's been engineered. And then on the bottom, we have a rocker switch. That just has such good feedback. It comes back to center so easily, it's smooth. And that is automatically set to be the digital tele converter for this camera. I know people don't always like digital tele converters, and the RAWs from this keep the original image, so you don't have to worry about losing anything. But in terms of a compositional tool, that's really handy. It has 3 levels, and I'll show you those now. On top of that front rocker switch, the other compositional element that I think you get from this camera is this ratio dial. So the ratio dial here is pretty much flush with the body, sticks out a little bit. Again, it's got that lovely gnarled design, and you can move this through and it's got a bunch of different ratios. And when you go through those, the camera will then shoot that ratio and you'll be able to see it on the screen. I always watch reports around cameras. I'm an absolute tech nerd, so I watch every review for these. I love to see what people are talking about. And one of the issues I saw that people were coming up with for this camera is that dial can feel awkward, right? If you're cycling between ratios, you can't see them when your eye is to the viewfinder, which I think is how a lot of people will shoot with this. And so you have to kind of remember what's next to find the one you want. I don't think that's actually an issue. If you shoot like that, fine, but I think a lot of people aren't shooting like that. I think the point of that is to decide, okay, I'm shooting for, let's say, my book, and I want 3 kind of X-Pan style images on this page, and I've got 3 pages that I want to shoot like that. I think you can then put it in that ratio, so you can shoot with that vision in mind. I can't envision people swapping between them all the time. I think people will shoot because they want that specific ratio. And it doesn't really matter afterwards, because the RAWs, again, just like the rocker switch with the teleconverter, you keep your full 4:3 image, and in your editing program, it shows as shot. So I can keep my original crop, or I can change that to become the original image, the 4:3, if I think actually I've not got that quite right, that ratio didn't work here. I also think that gives you inspiration. So when you're in a place that's like this, where there's a lot going on. Sometimes there's something that where you're like, I can tell there's beauty here, I can tell there's an image here, but I can't pull it out, I can't get it right. And I think being able to just pull your thumb through those ratios just allows you a little bit of inspiration sometimes in order to find that image. When you have that and the digital teleconverter, that gives you so much compositional flexibility and inspiration within the camera. I love that. Now, on top of that, on the front, we also have this rocker switch. That looks like the one from the X100RF, I would imagine it's pretty much the same thing, that you use to go between your EVF and your OVF. Sorry, brain stopped. But it's not, because we don't have an OVF in this. So that means you can basically customize this to have so many different functions. So right in the middle, you have a button, so you can have that go to whatever you want. You can also then set the rocker switch in 2 different positions. So you can have a little fast click through on that left-hand side, can cycle through a few things. At the moment, I'm using that to cycle through viewfinder display, LCD display, eye sensor. And on the other side, I'm using it to cycle through my view modes. So when you are using your ratio switch, you can either choose for the screen to show the complete thing with a little white box around your ratio. You can have the edges to be black, or you can have them a sort of shaded transparency. You can see what's going on around you, but you're able to easily compose. And I currently have that set for those view modes. If you do a long press in either direction, then you get another thing to cycle through, or an on-off if you like. So it just allows you so much functionality without ever taking your eye away from the camera. And that is the only way for me to try to describe to you what the shooting experience with this is like. Yes, you get increased functionality. A lot of those things you can always get through a menu system, right? It's not about that. It's about you being in the moment. And once you've got used to this camera and used to the controls, it becomes second nature, and you don't have to look away, and you don't have to take your eye off and be concentrating on this when you should be concentrating on what is around you and what's happening. And this just minimizes the distance between you and your image and your subject and the beauty around you, until this becomes such a tiny piece of it that I think it just makes you a better photographer whilst you're shooting. It certainly made me feel more connected to what is happening around me, and I can only see that as a good thing. Something we absolutely have to speak about is this fixed 35mm f4 lens. Right now, I've got this adapter on it, so this gives me this nice lens hood, and if I take this off, I can put a filter on the front of there. And this camera now is completely weather sealed. Just like the X100 series, you have to have this applied as well in order to have the full weather sealing. But without it, the lens looks significantly smaller. Let me show you. Unlike the X100 series, the GFX100RF actually comes with all these little accessories, which is great because they don't on other cameras. But with this one, you get that weather sealing set included. This is Sertash. And without that lens hood and that weather sealing, just look at the little footprint of this camera. This is tiny. Not only have they put a leaf shutter in this lens in order to minimize this footprint even further, but it kind of makes sense to make it f4 at this stage, right? Like, if this was, and I know people are going to be pixel peeping and comparing this to the Leica Q3's lens, and I get it, but the Leica Q3's lens is significantly larger. If you want something, and I think this was the point with Fuji, if you want something really unintrusive, where you can be as close to your subject, and I don't just mean physically close, but feel like you're close to your subject, that you don't have a huge amount of separation between you, and have a camera that maybe if you're in a situation where it's not the easiest, you're not going to get the most natural response if you're holding a big piece of kit that looks like a big expensive camera, maybe this is where this camera steps up. Because if I was doing journalism, documentary photography, or just traveling and just trying to get the most natural shots of my surroundings, or maybe surroundings that are challenging and actually you don't want to look like you've got the most expensive kit possible, this is where this sort of camera stands out. Saying that, if you want something where you don't really care that much about the footprint as much, you could still get a GFX100S2, stick maybe the 55 1.7, and then all your problems are solved. You've got IBIS and you've got a quick lens. Oh, I was really trying to not walk through this. This is a horrible photo, I really misjudged it, but it's a good dynamic range test. This is so dark and that is so bright. So let's see what we can bring back in edit. Look how majestic Connor looks. In the background, he's got the Sigma BF. We're gonna have a nice review on that soon. The light is now gone, but my battery isn't. I've only used 3 out of 5 bars, which I think for shooting all day and not changing the battery once, I am well impressed with. However, I can't say the same for Jakob's camera or what Connor's shooting on today. So we're gonna go back, get changed, get the batteries changed up, and then head out to do some low light tests with this. It is a slight struggle in this light. If I brace myself, I can shoot like between 1/15th and 1/30th of a second without too many issues. I'm at 1/30th here, and if I zoom right in, there's like the most minuscule amount of movement, but I can still individually see each rivet very, very clearly. Like, it's still brilliant, but it's not quite as brilliant as the day. I think I'd have rather had a slightly more cumbersome camera and had those things, but in the day it's just not a problem, and in most shooting scenarios it's not a problem, but sometimes it is. I'm sort of missing having something that's just a little bit faster. I don't know, still love using it. Nice bit of light and then I'm happier again. Being able to shoot from the hip and shoot quickly with reliable autofocus is really important for a camera like this. And I have been doing it a few times. Someone's walked into a chink of light or something like that, and I've just thrown the camera up, not even looking, completely relying on the face and eye detect autofocus. And the results have been pretty good, I'm not disappointed. But so you can see exactly how it's performing, here are a few tests. Hola, could I get a bracelet? But could it say this? Thank you. Yeah. I'm very cool. For the few days I used the camera, I loved it. I loved how it allowed me to connect to my surroundings and subjects, how I felt so free to use it wherever I was because it doesn't look like a 102 megapixel medium format monster of a camera. And if you've watched this video thinking, f4 doesn't work for me, I really want IBIS, then maybe this isn't a camera for you. And it's not been designed with you in mind, but there are plenty of cameras that have been, from Fujifilm and from everyone else. If you take a look at MPB.com, we've got different fixed lens compacts, things like the Leica Q3. We've also got a lot of the GFX range where you could design your own slightly bigger version of this with a faster aperture, and you can be getting IBIS, or there's tons of other cameras to choose from. If you've got comments or questions, make sure to pop them down below. We'll do our best to get back to you with all the information that you could need. But for now, a massive thank you for watching, and I hope you join us again for some more videos from MPB. Let's get some natas.